You are tuned in to the SoulSense podcast. We're back for another one and another one and another one. Well, this is Kim, and I have my trusty wingman, Melvin.
Howdy, howdy.
And we're back, guys. And you know what? First off, before we get into what we're going to talk about, what's going on, Melvin? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, baby?
Yeah. Nothing. Nothing at all.
Life,
Yeah,
life,
just life.
life,
I have been put through I've been getting pledged by my kids this week. And yeah, man, it has been I'm a pretty patient guy typically. And like, for example, whenever we have something over our house, I'm typically the person that will take all the kids and, you know, keep them occupied, let them run around not because I'm so great with kids, but because I just have a, a pretty high tolerance for, just insanity. So I don't mind getting them all together. And now I don't let them run wild. I can keep them corralled and all that kind of stuff. And I don't mind. You go to timeout. Okay, now it's your turn to come out. Now this, that, and the other. Typically, it doesn't bother me at all. Um, and especially when there's other people kids, because ultimately I know that it's only going to be for, a few hours. But, man, this week, man, has been a doozy.
it seemed like we reverse roles because I'm the one that's like, hey, I need some help here. But I've been just as patient and as cool as a cucumber.
You wasn't cool last night, fool. You left me out. But anyway, my daughter has been. We have mentioned before, like if you don't got kids, man, people who got kids will know that putting the kids to bed,
it can be a fight.
It can be a fight, man. My daughter historically, man, she has gone to bed without many problems. Of course, no kid want to go to bed, but once we say, hey, it's bedtime, it's not typically a big deal.
No.
But here lately, she has been, now we had a 3-day weekend, which, she's just up partying, living life. And I ain't gonna lie, we try to keep her up so she'll sleep in, but she
we
does.
Those type of parents. See, we be trying to think smarter, not harder. So we're like, okay, if we want to sleep in, that means we got to keep the oldest up a little bit at night so she can sleep in.
But it don't never work.
No, not really.
It never works.
One day it's going to, I believe.
Well, what I told her on Saturday or Sunday, I was like, listen, I'm gonna keep you up. You can stay up, kick it with me, but when it's in the morning time, I don't want to. Don't you come in there and wake us up. If you come down, just come on down and chill out. She's like, well, what if I want to watch cartoons? I'll leave the remote control. You grab the remote and you turn on cartoons. And matter of fact, it'll probably be on Cartoon Network because that's what Daddy watch at night. So you can go ahead and watch your cartoons and relax. Just don't wake us up, And she actually did she woke me up.
Yeah.
But
typically on Saturday, that's when I sleep in.
Yeah, I normally get up and make breakfast and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I digress. So this week, she has been, first off, I had to take her to a eye doctor appointment, and they had to dilate her eyes with these eye drops. And she is wilding out, man.
I don't know what's going on.
I mean, outrageous. And I'm already starting to just get frustrated. Like, come on, baby. Like, what are you doing? You don't even know. At least let them put some eye drops in to see if it hurts. Then you can go wild. But you ain't never had an eye drop in your eye before. Why are you wilding out? And then she just was, Tell me from your point of view, Kimberly.
Well, you know what? Honestly, I think you did good that day. He's been really holding it together very well because that day, so, you got her from school and you had to take her over to the next town for her eyes because there's not a whole lot of pediatric eye doctors. That was the closest one to us. So he did that. You brought her home. Did you pick up the baby too? I mean, you were doing a lot that, like, you got food or you did a lot. No, you bathed her and you read with her. You did the homework with her. And I went and got the baby. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you just was suited and booted. And I was like, wow, like he's just, look at him. And then
I made the eye doctor appointment. Now, to some people, this may not seem like a lot, but Kimberly is like our caretaker. I don't make no appointments, none of that. But I've been trying to get better because literally
it's a lot.
Yeah, I don't even be thinking about it. And she was just going through this list of things that she had to do. And I was like, why am I just sitting here listening to this list? I could easily pick up the phone and make some calls and try to get this stuff together. And so I did. We didn't talk about it, but it's just one of those things where I thought to myself, like, you know what, you could just do this, and even though y'all don't talk about it, it's gonna at least take a little bit off of her. And yeah, man. And I didn't even tell you, but I thought it was 3:15, and I thought the point was it was at 2:15.
Yeah, I told you it was at 2:15.
Oh, well, I thought it was at 3:15.
You.
I just thought I was gonna be super early. I was trying to be an hour early just because I know how I could get. But anyway, so that's the first crying. And then at night, she has just been coming downstairs. Like we had a meeting with our small group at church, and it was a conference call. And hey, whoever else ain't on that conference call game, you got to do it, man. But anyway, conference call, and she's coming down like every 5 seconds. And she got this little stuffed animal called Lammy. And it's got this little shaky bell in it. And I hear that bell, man, and it's like the Friday the 13th, choo, 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 caw, 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 caw. And I was like, man, what is going on?
It is. It put you on edge when you hear it.
Yeah. And then she did this 2 nights in a row where she is just, I come out and she is crying. Like I hear her crying, I mean bawling in one room, and then my baby bawling in another.
Screaming.
And I'm like, man, what's going on? She's like, I'm just so scared. And then she did it again last night. And like, I ain't gonna lie, y'all. Like I first was a little bit, probably not, I don't know how to handle those type of things. You know what I mean? Mm. And I'm like, girl, if you don't stop and get up here and go to bed. And then I started to see like, hey, she actually is kind of scared. And she can get something in her mind and it just keeps building and building and building. And to the point, like it could start out, I don't want to go to bed. So I'm going to
say I'm scared.
Right. But it could keep on building to the point that it is just real. But the thing is, I don't know. I don't know if she's really scared. And I don't know I do know is she is crying crazy. And I go up, walk her upstairs, and I have a conversation with her. And it turned out good, but still, man, it has just been, man, I was like, man, I kind of want to square up with this little girl. And I felt that way a couple times. Like, I mean, let's just go ahead and shoot a fair one. And I don't think that I would win because I'm a broken man. But, yeah, man. Like it was not my finest hours, folks. Not my finest hours.
Hey, sometimes you have to throw in your flag and just be like, you know what, I'm gonna try better later. Cause I'm gonna tell you, I done had plenty of weeks that was me. Cause it's just so funny because like typically you're the level-headed one, and I always tell Melvin it's so funny to me because because we've been together for so long, like we know each other's like nonverbal cues. Like I think he can tell when I'm starting to like I'm a little teapot and here I get all steamed up, hear me shout. Like I feel like you can tell when I'm like building up, and I can tell. It seems like nobody else can tell, but I can tell when he is mad, when he is frustrated, when he's irritated, because he doesn't come out and just, it doesn't come out. It's like the tension in his face. I can tell, like, okay, are you okay? And nobody notices it, but it's so obvious to me. I mean, like to a point where I don't even know if your mom even notices it, because I could tell it. I could tell too. It's like, but that's what happens when you're married. You got those intimate cues with each other. So, but I think you did fine. It's the weekend now.
Yeah, and we did have a good holiday weekend.
We did. It was Labor Day, so we had a good family time, just chilling and being together and stuff.
I feel like we hadn't. How was the week? How was getting back to work? Was it?
Actually, this week has been really good. I typically only work 4 days a week, but with the holiday, I worked 3 days, and I was back in the territory that I typically work in, and so that made me happy because I'm familiar with that area, and so it was actually a really good week. I can't even complain. I think the drama was more so on your end this week.
Yeah.
He said, yeah. Okay.
But, hey, what can you do?
Yeah, I know. Parenthood, the tales of parenthood. So, anywho, so this week we are going to do another hot topic. That sounds like Hot Pocket. I'm sorry, guys. I like that. Hot topic.
If y'all haven't caught, Kimberly is trying her best to insert theme music into this podcast, and I'm doing my best to ignore it.
We don't have to insert it. I'll be the music. So anyways, because okay, let me tell y'all something about myself. I can sing all day, every day. Just in regular conversation. Me and my sorority sisters is like a group of us. Like that's all we used to do back in the day, was just sing a tune. And so it's nothing. I can do it all by myself. But anyways, back to our subject at hand. We're going to discuss a hot topic right about now. And the last hot topic we spoke about was immigration. And as we were thinking about what we're going to talk about this week, it is so apparent there's lots of hot topics, but one of the controversial, popular things that's being talked about now is this new Nike ad that came out with Colin Kaepernick. And then, of course, there's been a lot of people who are so upset with Nike. People have been burning their clothes. They've been cutting the Nike swoosh off their socks. And of course, the story of Colin Kaepernick has been revisited about why he is such a controversial figure right now, especially in sports and just in the climate that we're in. So we wanted to talk about that. We wanted to gain some perspective. We want to talk about some scriptures and basically let y'all in. Just, me and Melvin, one of the things that we just kind of just have been doing for many years is, we just kind of throw around conversations. I guess many people sit and talk with their spouses about things, their partners, roommates, whatever. And we just want to kind of invite you guys in on a conversation. We haven't really talked a lot about this off the mic, but so we just wanted to talk about it here. And for the record, just to make sure that, we're not talking about things that we don't know about, I made sure to do some research. And so I do have some facts that I'm going to read off. But let's just open up and let me ask you a question, Melvin.
Drop it on me.
What did you think about that Nike ad? Like, where were some of the emotions that were evoked? I mean, the memes that have been coming out and all of that.
So I thought the ad itself. I mean, I'm not easily impressed by like. I get why Nike did it. So let me first say that. Like, first off, I think from a business. So let me talk from a business point of view. Like, if I put my business hat on, I think that people who, from a business standpoint, so first thing I believe is that a hard reaction on either side is not genuine, right? Especially when it comes to these business, like these $1 billion businesses. They don't they don't have a dog in the fight really either way, right? So let's say the NFL, they they don't really care, like
Like
either way.
they're portraying.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't really care because all of these people have billions of dollars that they could use to be lobbying. And in our country right now, we have a huge, just like there is a problem with improper policing, there is also a problem with improper equipping of police officers. Like police officers got to work like overtime to just to make a decent living a lot of times. So they could be, if they really felt that way, each of these NFL teams are in cities, and they could really be put, if they could push the local government to give them $1 billion to build. I mean, well, maybe not $1 billion, but $100 million to build a stadium. They could definitely use that power to push the local government to raise the pay standards for police officers, right? Like they could use that same thing to do that. So if they really cared, then they would be doing those things. Or with Colin Kaepernick kneeling, they really cared and they felt like, hey, this is disrespecting the troops and whatever else, then they have enough national clout to make a big deal out of some of the injustices that are going on with our soldiers when they come home. Like we got homeless soldiers everywhere. Like people who, we know, I know personally people who have come back. Her dad helps people out. He's a veteran.
A Vietnam vet, my dad
and,
is.
I sit and talk to him, and he tells me stories about people who he's had to help to get their benefits together, that if he would not have helped them, they were having trouble getting the basic necessities. And these are guys who came back with like Agent Orange and different type of things like that. But anyway, there are a lot of things way before Colin Kaepernick knelt that could have been addressed if this is a big deal for you, especially you're $1 billion company. So, and vice versa, Nike, they could have been donating money to schools, and there's a lot of different things that you could do. So all of that goes to say that I feel like both of these people are gambling on what they feel like is going to make fiscal, business sense.
Yeah. And what the bottom dollar is.
Yeah. And I personally think the NFL is gambling down the wrong tree, man. They're like pandering to a non-existent base, right? Because eventually people are going to figure out, because I do think people are genuinely upset and they feel like it's disrespectful to truth. But ultimately, this is going to fade away. Like that height. And when we look back on this 30 years from now, it's going to be just like the way we look back at, the civil rights movement and the women's suffrage movement and all those kind of things. And somebody's going to be on one side of history or the other. But even more, Nike is going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because of this.
Yep.
A lot of money. So just from a business sense, I thought it just was very logical to put yourself on the opposite of, especially since they're a sponsor of the NFL. I don't think Adidas doing it would be smart, but Nike definitely. So that's just from a business point of view. I didn't really have, I like the sentiment of it about being willing to give up everything, to sacrifice everything for what you believe in. I think a lot of times these commercials can just kind of pander, like push a shallow message. I think that if you get past whether you agree or disagree with the topic at hand, there's a lot of value in that sentiment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I thought it was a cheesy commercial, but I thought the sentiment was good. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think the commercial, first off, you got to know that I'm a feeler, kind of like an empath. So like I just feel people. And so I like the commercial because if you notice throughout the commercial, it was pointing out people who had faced adversity, whether it been just in their natural life or it's been because of, the cards that they were dealt and they overcame. They had the one little 16-year-old boy who was a refugee, but helped his soccer team win a championship. Of course, they had LeBron James on there who it could very well just stay in his lane and be a basketball player. And like the journalist said, that he just should just bounce a ball. But as we all know, that LeBron is doing a lot for the underserved population in his community that he grew up into by opening up a school. And then you got Serena Williams, who, I mean, to me, is just like, I just love Serena. I just love her. But, here she is, like, she's like a freak of nature. Like, she can do it all, you know what I'm saying? And people have been criticizing her and her family for years. And so they highlighted these people who, even in the face of adversity, they still are rising. And then, of course, at the end, you see that it's being narrated by Colin Kaepernick. And yes, he has lost a lot by his stance in all of this. So the commercial, to me, I did like the commercial. I did. I mean, I'll just be honest with you about it. So go ahead.
I'm gonna splice the commercial in, but I'm listening. I'm looking at it. Yeah. Maybe I need to watch it again.
Did you watch the full one? Because there were a couple of snippet ones out there. There was one where he didn't say anything. It was like a little small one, and then there was like a longer one, and then at the end he turns around and says something. So it was
okay. So let's listen to this commercial.
Okay.
You talk while I'm doing this.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys some facts because I wanted to make sure before we talked about anything that I came up on here and I actually was not talking from opinion or what I perceive this situation to be, but I wanted to speak on, what the facts are so we can make an educated decision or or have an educated stance. And so let me just give you some facts first. So all of this started back in 2016. And to refresh everyone's memory, for the last couple of years, our country has been it has been coming out on social media with the camera phones and our phones, a lot of brutality, people being killed and mistreated by police officers. There's been a number of deaths that have been caught on phones. from Mike Brown being shot, to Alton Sterling, to Philando Castile, and the list goes on and on. There's been many people. If you Google that, you can find many people, but those are like the big ones, that sparked a lot of, upset. So Colin Kaepernick played for the 49ers, right? He was the quarterback, right, Melvin?
Correct.
And very good player, very good player. And he decided one day to not stand, but to sit during the national anthem, sit on a bench during the national anthem. And I actually brought up the article from when that was. It was the preseason game that they played with the Green Bay Packers. And this was his quote. It says, "I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses Black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than football. It would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder." And so, of course, the 49ers released a statement. The national anthem will always be a special part of the preseason ceremony. It's an opportunity to honor our country, reflect on the great liberties we are afforded as its citizens, and respecting such American principles as freedom and religion expression. We recognize the right of an individual to choose and participate or not in our celebration of the national anthem. And of course, the NFL released a statement saying players are encouraged but not required to stand during the playing of the national anthem. So that's the initial thing that started back in 2016. So, of course, this had everybody remembers this. If you watch TV, you know what happened. A lot of people started to burn his jersey. People felt like he was being disrespectful to our country. He was being disrespectful to our troops. And there was one particular veteran, and he was part of the Green Beret unit, and I think he also played in the NFL as well, but his name was Nate Boyer, Boyer. He wrote an open letter to Colin Kaepernick, and basically, and I remember reading it a couple of years back, and basically expressing how he felt like he was being disrespectful. And so Colin then reached out, and I'm getting this information from an actual interview that Nate Boyer actually had. And he actually said that Colin reached out to him and asked to meet with him. They then met together, and they had a conversation. And Colin had the opportunity to express to him, for one, that I appreciate your service, and also to say, hey, look, this is why I'm doing what I am doing. It has nothing to do with the troops. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to, like, just like what he said, this is bigger than football, and we do live in a country where something has to happen. Some awareness needs to be brought to this. And in his power, he felt like this was the way that he could do it. Well, with all of that, Nate started to say, hey, you know what? I kind of understand why you can feel the way that you feel. Something does need to be done about this. And in that, he suggested to Colin, hey, it's still disrespectful to stand. What about if you kneel? And he gave him the example of, like, we kneel to pray. We kneel to when our fallen soldier has died, we kneel at his graveside. And so maybe that would be more respectful. And Colin actually thought that was a great compromise, hence when he started to kneel.
Yeah. I think that shows. Did you have some more?
No, I didn't want to get too wordy, but I did want to paint the picture so we can have the facts.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's all you can do. You know what I mean? Is have dialogue, But the dialogue can't start with, and I think where the problem is coming in at is on any side of the issue, you can't start by just dogging Colin Kaepernick out. Because the man said a million times, like, hey, this is not about the troops and the flag and whatever else. And the gentleman who you mentioned, all he could do is go and talk to Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
But it's the same way in the reverse, right? Because while that guy was, because I remember him being interviewed even before he talked to Colin Kaepernick, you know, even when he was saying, you know, it's disrespectful, and his point was, I don't have a problem with, I agree that, you know, there shouldn't be any injustice in America, and we should care about that, but I just don't agree with what you're doing. Now, if there's not going to be any conversation, there's not going to be any growth if automatically I look at this guy and I'm like, no, you're racist and you don't, you know, you don't care about this, that, and the other. It took both of them to be like, let's talk and let's see what each other's point is. Let's talk about it. And at the end of the day, Colin Kaepernick walked away with a deeper understanding of how people could feel about what he was doing.
Yes.
And vice versa, that gentleman walked away with a deeper respect and understanding for what Colin Kaepernick was doing.
That's right.
There didn't have to be any compromise there, but I think there was, only because that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think if we did that way more, you know, we would, that's how we could grow. But instead, everybody is so busy discounting the other person's feelings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course, as a black man, I'm automatically feel more, you know, I can definitely relate to the things that Colin Kaepernick is talking about. Now, he himself may have never been the victim of police brutality, you know what I mean, or anything like that. But he has empathy. Just, you know, a lot of times being a person of color, man, even if you don't realize it, you going through, like, you living in a different America. And I can't expect anybody to understand that if you don't live through it, point blank. But, you know, it's easy for me to understand where Colin Kaepernick is coming from. I definitely have been the victim of varying degrees of police brutality, but I have to also make the effort on the flip side to understand why somebody would be upset. Now, sometimes it just is, you know, it does come down to a thing about race. But sometimes people are genuinely, like, I have to go into it giving them the benefit of the doubt first off, so that we can have a conversation. But the thing that I can't say is, you know, not being, you know, I can't just make it that snap judgment. And I've heard this, and just to be real, man, like, the thing that I do struggle with is, and I have heard, like, good people, man, like people who I know who are, like, you know, righteous, good people, just make these sweeping statements like racism doesn't exist anymore. This is not a big problem. And these are white people. And I mean, even some black people, but racism's not a problem and this, that, and the other. And my whole point is, it's not a problem for you. Even black, if you haven't, you can't speak for everybody else's reality. And it would be very foolish to think that like, we look at slavery, you know, however many 100 years ago, but, you know, our parents were born during Jim Crow days, like, or at least not, schools weren't integrated, you know. So, I mean, it would be very hard to believe that everything is just hunky-dory now. But anyway, let's listen to this.
Okay.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, Good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Iron Man after beating a brain
I
tumor.
like the fact that it's
Don't believe you have to be like
multicultural.
anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't
Great.
ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
You know what? I mean, I watched this live when it aired, and I thought it was cheesy, but this actually is pretty daggone good, man. I don't
It
know.
is.
Maybe I'm just a hater.
It is good.
It was good. It was emotional.
Yes, it's like multicultural. You see men and women. You see kids. You see people who have overcome a lot of odds. They had, for those who haven't seen it, there's a little boy that is wrestling, doesn't have legs. You got the guy that plays football that has one arm, people playing basketball in wheelchairs. I mean, my gosh. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get over it. You got to get over your hang-ups, man. Like, because at the end of the day, even if you don't agree with anything that Colin Kaepernick is saying, if you don't agree with his, first you got to make a decision. Do you not agree with what he's saying, or do you not agree with his methods? Because the thing that has confused me is like, okay, let's say you don't agree with his methods. The man is out of football. Like, he has suffered the consequences of his stand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you shouldn't care anymore. Now he's out of football. He ain't kneeling for the national anthem anymore. So now, why don't I hear anybody talking about the bigger issue?
Yeah.
Because it's you can't, and it's not just black and white. And that's the thing that ticks me off so bad, man. And it is not like, this is what I don't want to say the government, but this is what people do to, like, and this is historical, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you think, like, if we look back at slavery days, right? Mm-hmm. You can juxtapose, or you could compare slavery, the environment of slavery, to the environment now. In this way, like with the immigration thing, right? Mm-hmm. For a while there, immigration, they were saying like, the immigrants are coming over here and taking your jobs. They don't say that anymore, but that was the whole thing, you know, like they're taking jobs and they're this, that, and the other. And they created this narrative to control people, right? To get people to not think about their situations. In slavery times, the argument was opposite. Like, you had the people who fought and died for slavery were not these rich plantation owners. A very small percentage of people benefited in the South benefited from slavery. Super small. The majority of people, slavery was a bad thing for them. Because think about it. I am Henry Peanut Farmer. Mm-hmm. And you know, I came over here with the first wave of Americans, and I made my way down south, and I'm growing peanuts. And then And I got a little good peanut farm. We're not rich or nothing, but we are supporting ourselves, and we are, we're making things happen. We the peanut guys. And then this millionaire comes down from wherever, and he buys a big old plot of land, clears it out, and he goes and, because he's rich, he goes and grabs a bunch of people from Africa, free labor, and now he is able to produce way more peanuts than I can. Mm-hmm. He is able to sell his peanuts at a way cheaper cost. And so now me, Henry Peanut Farmer, I forget what I called his name, but Henry the Peanut Farmer that just had a labor force of his 10 kids, he is out of business.
Yep.
Because he can't compete with this guy. And that is what slavery did to the common man in the South. It was not a good thing. But, you get people, and those guys ended up being like pretty much like the first sharecroppers. And then after slavery, the slaves became sharecroppers. And now the white guys couldn't even be sharecroppers. So these things were never good for the people in the South. But they ended up fighting and dying, and still today support a lot of the things that are bad, are detrimental to them. And the way that people in power stay in power is they create these divides. So you, Southerner, who has just gotten displaced out of your farmer by some guy by playing by different rules, they make you fight for your own oppression because they say, at least you not this black guy. Mm-hmm. You better than him. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with this police brutality. Where I grew up, it was like not even 1% black. Like not even 1% black. But there still was police brutality, and there still was crooked cops. And it was not all black people that was getting it. Like they get these poor people who didn't have the same voice, and you get two people that get in trouble. The poor white guy will get, I don't know, some crazy sentence, while this guy whose parents got connections just gets off scot-free. I've seen it all the time, man. But we buy this narrative that can divide us, that like police brutality is just this thing black people are making up. Police brutality and improper policing is bad for all parties involved. Good cops suffer because of that. Good cops lose their lives. What happened in Dallas, there were good police officers that died, and it is predicated by bad policing.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it makes an environment that can make this mentally unstable guy have a reason. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And attach himself. And it just creates this bad environment.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's a that just makes me so angry just to see the whole the racial part of it. But anyway.
So I guess the next thing that we should address then is this silent protest that Colin Kaepernick is going through, and let's get some perspective, some biblical perspective too with it, because at first glance, I think people can think, or we all can think, oh, this is this privileged, rich NFL player. What does he know? Isn't he like biracial? I think that was something that came up one time. Like you weren't, I remember seeing some commentary where somebody had made a comment like, you were raised by Caucasian people, so what do you know? Why are you?
Because he was adopted.
Yeah,
by a white family.
And people were feeling like he was just jumping on the bandwagon at first, and clearly at this point, if he had jumped on the bandwagon, he would have been done jumped off by now, because he has definitely. It's not like he was a little scrub of a football player. He was a good football player, a starting quarterback. And so, did he win it? Didn't he go to the final?
Went to the Super Bowl, went to 3 conference championships.
So he ain't no little scrub. Okay. So he put his job on the line and has not been working. Okay. So anyways, I want to bring up a story in parallel this, because I guess the question that's out there now is taking a stand for something against, when nobody else sees it. Would you word it that way?
Yeah. Or just taking a stand for something
Yeah.
and being willing to lose it all. Basically, the sentiment of that commercial.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not going to read this story. I will paraphrase it, but it is Daniel chapter 3. And it is entitled Rescue from a Furious King. Nebuchadnezzar Demands Worship. So the king at this time was this man called Nebuchadnezzar. And he was Babylonian, and I think he had constructed this 90-foot gold statue of himself, and he commanded, made a decree for everyone to worship it. Well, there were 3 Jews who were named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And some of you guys may definitely know this story, but they worshiped the Lord and not Nebuchadnezzar. And they were part of his court. And I want to say a part of the court went and basically told on them and told Nebuchadnezzar that they were not worshiping this statue. Nebuchadnezzar gets mad because he had made this decree that if you did not worship this statue, you would get thrown in a fiery furnace. And so he brought them in. He asked them, is this true that you're not, worshiping me? And their response, which is a very good response, I will read this. So over in chapter 16, verse 16, it says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing fire, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up. And then clearly this made Nebuchadnezzar furious and so mad and rageful that he actually ordered that the furnace be turned up 70 times its heat. And so he ordered the soldiers to go throw them in. The fire was so hot that as the soldiers were throwing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the furnace, the flames came out and burned up the soldiers who threw them in. And so these 3 men, they're in this furnace. Nebuchadnezzar is sitting there with his advisors, and he says, wait, didn't we throw 3 bound men into there? Because they had tied their hands and their feet. And his advisors say, yes, we threw them in there. And he was like, well, I see 4. And it looks like they're walking around. And so then he ordered them to come out. And he was like, y'all, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, y'all come out. And when they came out of the furnace, walked out of the furnace, right? They were not burned. They were not singed. They didn't even smell like smoke. And basically an angel from God was in there protecting them. And at that point, Nebuchadnezzar, he ends up making a declaration. He says, let me find it. He said, excuse me, guys. He praises God. He says, praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any God except their own God. Therefore, I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from from limb, and their houses would be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no God, no other God who can rescue like this. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. So I read this passage because as I think about what's going on, to me, when I think of these situations and what they have in common is there's a group of people or person who believes in something and has a conviction in something. And instead of going along with what the majority may think or going the safe route, they decide to stand firm in what their conviction is. And in this story, the three Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their turnaround was quick. They got thrown in the fire. It didn't work. They came out, and all of this probably happened within a matter of like hours, Colin Kaepernick, on the other hand, it's been years that's going on. And I could say he is probably still in his furnace, But me and Melvin were kind of chatting beforehand, and we were talking about just this idea of group thinking versus the individual thinking. And some people may think that you may think that this is a stretch to kind of pair these two stories together. But for me, I'm going to be quite honest with you. The reason, Kaepernick clearly has stated why he's doing what he's doing. Okay. There is an injustice going on, and I would say nobody can dispute that. If you're honest, nobody can dispute that. There have been some inappropriate things that have happened that have led to deaths, and there have been people on file who have had paid leave and have come right back to work. That's fact. That is a fact. Okay. And I appreciate the fact that somebody of his stature who doesn't have to say anything used his platform, and he had a safe life. He was, like I said, like Melvin said, he was not a scrub. He could have gone on and did the safe route, but instead he used his platform and use it to bring awareness. And that's what I'm looking. And before I let Melvin chime in here, I want to read another scripture, very short scripture. It's Proverbs 31, verses 8 and 9. And I had it, but I lost it. So hold on, give me 1 second, guys. I'm almost there. And here we go. And it says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless and see that they get justice." And to me, this is directly pointing to what's going on here. And going back to the story in Daniel, having a conviction and standing in that. Whatever you are, not sitting the fence, but standing firm in what your decision is. So sorry that I kind of dominated there, but I know I got a little wordy, but come on and chime on in, Melvin.
Yeah, I do think that scripture is very appropriate for this. Maybe for a little bit, not a different reason, but even for more of a reason. Again, like I said, I think speaking in the context of the commercial itself, just this idea of being willing to suffer for doing good. I think biblically that is a sentiment that's all through the Bible. You can just flip through the letters and
the suffering.
Yeah, you'll hear it 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. Romans, as we know, that those who love God, all things work for good for those who are called according to His purpose. Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. This is 2 Timothy 3:12. I'll drop these in the description. Peter. And after you have suffered for a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory, him will himself restore you, restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. Like, I literally can just go through and read 1,000 just snippets of scriptures that talk about suffering, what happens after suffering, what comes out of suffering,
To expect it
and to expect it whenever you, because inevitably, when you make a decision to stand for something, there will be opposition, and there will be, even if the opposition isn't people, just things. You know what I mean? Like, as a Christian, I know, you know, there may be times where, like, I gotta sacrifice my time. I gotta sacrifice and that may not be big to somebody else, but that may be big for me. I have to, you know, money. It may be money. I can't make, I can't, my money is not just mine to be free with. You know, Kimberly and I both have good, decent jobs. We have good jobs, but the level of life that we could live, we don't live because we have, you know, our money is there are more important things with us to do for our money, with our money, than just live it up. Now, I'm not saying we, you know, just are, you know, not doing anything, but I don't want to paint that picture. But at the end of the day, doing good and doing the right thing always takes some type of sacrifice and suffering. But sometimes it's those extra points, like where she read with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where you are you willing to stand on your principles, even if it means losing everything? And that's something we all have to ask ourselves. Like, you know, are we willing to stand on our principles in this? And what are you doing to show that? Like, if you are, let's say you are upset about this commercial, or upset about Colin Kaepernick because you feel like that, you know, it's disrespectful to the troops. Well, then what are you doing to change how our troops are treated? Because there's other areas. It's very easy to hop on Facebook or on Twitter and type a bunch of stuff down and burn your Nikes and do all that kind of stuff. But that costs nothing except you burning some shoes, but it costs nothing from you personally. Like, if you believe that strongly in something, what are you doing to change the tide? Because, man, there's some soldiers, they need help. You know what I mean? They need an advocate. They don't just need you. You're not doing anything for the guy who came back from Iraq. Wife's gone and his mind is forever warped, lost an arm. Your burning Nikes ain't doing a flipping thing for him. A police officer who's like working double overtime shifts and risking his life every day, you're not doing nothing for him with that. And vice versa. If you are going hard for Colin Kaepernick and you believe like police brutality is wrong and it's a problem, like, don't nobody care about your Twitter outrage. Yeah. It's not doing anything. You're not doing anything to help. What are you doing to remedy the problem? If you're not part of the solution, you part of the problem. Like, all this arguing and going back and forth, that's cheap. That's just cheap activism. Get out there and do something that'll make a difference. And as a Christian, you know, we are supposed to understand that, like, this battle is not of flesh and blood. Mm-hmm. Flesh and blood is between you know, it's in the spiritual realm. You know what I mean? This is a spiritual battle. The answer to all of these problems is not me protesting, and it's not me whatever. I'm not knocking that in any way. And sometimes protest is necessary. But ultimately, as a disciple, as a Christian, we have to always be concerned with the deeper the more permanent solution, and we have to have spiritual eyes. So that's what that scripture talks to me, and that's a sacrifice, right? Because as a disciple, you're concerned with all parties involved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're concerned with everybody involved. Not every person who died was because of race, and some of it was because of fear. Probably 90% of it wasn't because of like prejudice. I won't say because of race, but because of prejudice. It was because of fear. And a split-second decision driven off of fear, there are a lot of lives that are forever changed. And if this police officer is truly a good police officer and truly a good guy who just acted off of fear, it doesn't matter that he didn't go to jail. He is going to be forever. If he in his heart looks and is like, let's say the guy with what was it? Was it Mike Brown? The guy with that got choked in New York.
Oh, I just had his name. I can look it up.
I can't remember his name, but Sean. No, I can't remember his name, but let's say that police officer realizes that because it was wrong. Nobody was meant to die. Either he's a cold-blooded murderer and he choked that guy to death on purpose, or he just got overzealous and there's a guy dead. And even if he got his job and he got all that, he's going to have, like this, everybody's life is ruined. Everybody's life is messed up.
Eric Gardner.
Everybody's life is messed up. And as a Christian, we have to feel broken for all of that. Because like that, the devil was just trying to get notches in his belt all across this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that, like when I hear that scripture, it really just brings me back into focus into like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing to, like, I may not even be called to, it ain't even costing me my job to go out and bring spirituality to people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it will, but it's not. Like 90% of us, it doesn't cost us near that much. We sacrifice way less. So what are we doing? And that's the question I got to ask myself. Is like, what am I doing with all these strong feelings that I have? What am I doing in response to that?
Yeah.
It's not even calling me to risk it all. So before I even get into risking it all, what am I doing? Period. If I have a feeling about any of these things, what is my part? Just commentating on it or typing or whatever, you know? So that's kind of how I feel.
And I've said it before, injustice is injustice, and, as I was sitting here just Googling, trying to jog my memory of the name of Eric Gardner, there were a whole bunch of names that popped up, and they weren't black people. They weren't all black people, and, there are, and I want to make this very clear, okay? Because I've had this conversation with many different people, and I'll give the example. We've all had good teachers, and we've all had bad teachers. But that good teacher has made probably an impact on you that probably outshadows a lot of the bad teachers. But then again, you could have had a bad teacher who could probably ruin your whole school. It could overshadow, your view of school in general. And it's the same thing with any profession. You got good and you got bad apples, and it's the same thing with police officers. So one of the things that I hate when I hear people say like, oh, I stand with the police. Well, yeah, we do need to stand with the police, but we also need to make sure, these are the people that are responsible to protect us. So we do need to make sure that the best and the most capable people are doing that, and that they're getting the training and the resources that they need to be able to police properly and efficiently. And that goes for anything. I am a nurse practitioner. If a doctor were to kill somebody, like, there will be a lawsuit and he will be going to jail. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, why do we make concessions? Just like we hold other professions to a standard, we need to hold this to a standard as well, and it could be like Melvin said, it could be that this police officer is scared, or fearful. Well, then that has to ask, why is this police officer fearful? Are they understaffed? Do they feel like they were outnumbered? Why are they outnumbered? Were they not able to get backup? You know what I'm saying? When he went through the academy, when she went through the academy, because it's men or women, were they taught how to properly de-escalate situations? These conversations should happen, and they should happen on an ongoing basis. And that's where I feel like there's been a brushing off, like, to me.
Yeah, man. Let's just keep it real. Like, I feel like nowadays, man, like we're like, it's like tribalism. You know what I'm saying? Like we are in these groups, and like all I can do is speak for the standard of like Christians, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's not supposed to. We supposed to be in a tribe. It's supposed to be a tribe of Christ. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I daily see people who support the most ridiculous things because it aligns with their political party or whatever. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, just some of the craziest actions, and they will explain it away. Whether it is, I try to be apolitical on here, so, but it don't matter. Whatever it is, we all know, man. You could turn on Facebook and people are like, for the president, let's say Barack Obama. There were people who all they wanted to do was see Barack Obama fail. Mm-hmm. They didn't care about so the people who say they love America, they just want to see him fail, regardless. And on the opposite side, people who want to see him win regardless. But people who just were praying for his downfall, like, and we allowed, like in the government, we just allowed people to just fight against common sense things like the healthcare thing. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. Like, there was no type of healthcare. Let's say Obamacare wasn't good, wasn't the best thing. There wasn't anything until then. And so you got people just want to see him fail. And then on the flip side, Donald Trump, there are people who just want to see him fail. Like, it don't matter, good or bad. They will never say, they just want to see him fail. Mm-hmm. Neither way is good. And just like I complained, I voted for Obama, but just like I complained about, people just going against the president, then I still feel like it's wrong now. And I feel like it's wrong to support everything. You can support the office of the president. You can support leaders, just like Shadrach, Meshach. I believe biblically, you should support your leaders. Mm-hmm. But look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah, they worked for the king.
They were employed by the king. Yeah. But when it came time to make a decision about my faith or my political allegiance, I'm going to go with my faith every time. And I don't think we live in that climate. I think we are easily swayed. And I'm talking about some of the most, like, in our regular lives, righteous people that I know. Mm-hmm. I see some of the craziest stuff, man. And it's not Republicans or Democrats. It's everybody, man. It's crazy. Yeah. But anyway, it is, I think, if there's anything that I can take away from this conversation and the conversations we had, is that, like, you got to try really hard you got to look at yourself first off. Like, when this whole Colin Kaepernick thing, I think there is something to be taken away from it. And we can reflect. Like, what are we willing to sacrifice? What do we believe in enough that we're willing to give it all for? And number two, what are we really? Are we Christians who happen to be born in America? Are we Americans who happen to be Christians?
Oh, that's a good question.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
that's a
can't
good
be
question.
both. It can't. You can't. You died to yourself. American Black Melvin died.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be raised anew. That don't mean I don't have a concern for the things that's going on around me. But I have to first approach it from my new identity as a disciple.
And the scripture says this ain't our home anyway. So
Right.
we're aliens in a foreign land. And, just to give, you gave, those are good questions. I want to give a challenge. So we talked a lot about group thinking and individual thinking. And I want to challenge everyone to, when it comes to not just only this situation, but any situation in life, and we got them all around us at work. There may be an employee or a coworker of yours that probably nobody likes in the office. Are you going along with the crowd because everybody doesn't like this person? Or have you actually invested in trying to get to know this person? Even in our churches, we're all flawed individuals. None of us are perfect. So we're going to get it wrong. Church is like a hospital. So you're going to have people in there that's going to be, wrong of some things. Are there ideas that you just go along with and in your heart that's wrong, or anything? You know what I'm saying? Like, I challenge us all to take some time in, when you're faced with these opportunities, take time to actually think for yourself. Get your facts. Do your research, just like I did today. I got on here and I made sure that I wasn't speaking from opinion. I wanted to see the progression of everything before I can take a stance. Challenge yourself to not sit the fence on things and to be firm and stand firm in whatever you believe. And lastly, I want to give lastly for me, I'll let you ring in after I finish sharing this, but I want to bring light to, at the end of the day, whether you agree or don't agree with what Colin Kaepernick is doing, one thing we can all agree is that this is a silent protest. And I think sometimes we as people, because we're actually going through the situation, living through the situation, we can separate it from other things that are like it that have happened in the past. So what I wanted to do is give examples of other examples in history of silent protests. So we can, because that's really what he's doing. He's not forcing, he's doing it by himself and being peaceful in it. So another form of, another example would be, give me 1 second, I'm bringing up the list. The marches on Washington. And this is when the famous speech, "I Have a Dream," was preached, given. That was a silent, peaceful protest. Also, the multiple sit-ins that happened all over during the civil rights movement. People, African Americans, weren't able to go and sit at the counters in the restaurants, and so they went in and they sat at the counter. There was no violence. There was violence that was forced upon them, but they themselves were coached and prepared and taught to just be peaceful and quiet. Another example, the Montgomery bus boycotts. This happened after the situation with Rosa Parks happened, and people stopped riding the bus because African Americans were the ones who were the main riders. Two other ones that are not African American is Gandhi, the Gandhi hunger strikes. And he did 17 fasts throughout his life to bring awareness of the plight of his fellow Indians. Also, lastly, Cesar Chavez. This was the Delano grape strike. And they were trying to just ask for fair wages. They were not getting the federal minimum wage. And after over more than 5 years, these farmers were able to bargain with an agreement for thousands of farm workers. So these are all examples of silent and peaceful protest. And this is no different. This is no different. And if you think about it, these people met resistance too. You know, I think about those sit-ins, and these people had coffee thrown on them, hot coffee. They had food thrown in their faces. The bus boycott, buses were burned for the Freedom Riders and all this stuff. Things were done to them, but they themselves were peaceful and quiet. So that's it. That's all I got there. Melvin, sorry.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't have anything else really. Yeah, I think this is a highly charged thing. My only challenge, like I said, man, is just take yourself out of all of these situations. Take let's give each other the benefit of the doubt and talk to people. You know what I mean? If you know somebody who is thinks the opposite you do on whatever it is, forget this situation. Whatever the situation is, you should not just seek. Like, we live in a world today where, like, the majority of people get their news from Facebook. And it's funny because Facebook is designed to give you exactly what you want to hear. So, like, the things that you look at, the things you look up, like, there's an algorithm that it feeds in things you like, the things whatever, and then that is what you see. And so if you look at your phone all day and you're just seeing things that support your line of thinking, and then you go and you watch news that only supports your line of thinking, then you talk to people and your friends only support your line of thinking, you are going to be very short-sighted. And you don't do any extra research. There's no historical data gathered, and you also don't go out and talk to anybody else. If I'm explaining your existence, then you're wrong. Whatever it is your opinion is, you're wrong. And I can say it without a doubt, because all you're doing is you're ignorant on a whole other half of the world. You're ignorant, and so you can't be fully informed, and so you can't be right about whatever it is that you're thinking. And so what the challenge is go out and find people who think opposite of you and have civil dialogue. Just talk about it. Don't come at it from an aggressive point of view, but just sit down and have conversations. One of the people I respect the most in this world has a completely opposite political view from me. Completely opposite. And the funny thing about it is, I knew this guy for probably about 3 years before I even knew this about him. Like, we just talked. And so, but who knows? If I would have known that, if he'd have led with that, I don't know if we would have gotten as close as we did, because I would have prejudged him for sure. And it's all on him, because he knew where I was coming from, and he still loved me and talked to me. And, you know, we're excellent friends, man. We're good friends. And that's my challenge for you. Other than anything else I said, is just, man, take advantage, man. Go out and find people who don't think like you think, and learn why, so that you can be well informed. But that's it.
That's all you got?
That's all I got, bro.
All right, guys. And so thank you guys for tuning in yet again with us. We definitely appreciate you. Please follow us on the SoulSense Podcast at SoulSense Podcast on Instagram. And we are now live on Facebook. Yeah. The SoulSense Podcast as well. And we will catch you guys later. This is Kim, my trusty wingman Melvin, and we're out of here.
Peace.
Wow.